Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about the virtual summit that took place this morning with Europe, Ukraine, and the United States. Obviously, this was Europe and Ukraine trying to influence Donald Trump before his summit with Putin, which is scheduled for August 15th in Alaska. Basically, I guess it must have been a Zoom call, and the people who were on that call were US President Donald Trump, US Vice President J.D. Vance, Zelensky, obviously, the Ukrainian president, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who is the host, who organized this summit. Actually, Zelensky is in Berlin for this summit and further discussions. And then there were leaders, the Secretary General of NATO and leaders from Finland, France, Italy, Poland, and the United Kingdom. They all raised several issues with Donald Trump because they are quite panicky and fearsome and afraid and anxious that Putin and Trump might make a deal about the future of Ukraine, about the future of Ukraine's territory, its borders, about the future of European security, without any input or participation from Europe or Ukraine. I think this is the whole biggest fear and anxiety that European leaders are experiencing because it drives home the profound importance that Europe feels at the moment that it cannot deal with its own future. And so they are suffering from this strong anxiety, and so they are hoping to influence Donald Trump, and that was the sole purpose of this conference. They want to be at the table. They are very worried as to how Putin will influence Donald Trump and what might come out of this conference. I personally don't expect anything significant coming out of this conference because the demands that Putin is making, I don't think that even Trump can accept them because they are maximalist. I mean, he's asking for everything plus the moon. And I don't think that Donald Trump can give that. Even Donald Trump will realize that he cannot convince Europe or Ukraine to make the concessions that Putin is demanding. But I think there are items there that Donald Trump can facilitate, and Putin is hoping to get those particular items. So what I'm going to do in this current conversations is I'm going to summarize the demands made by the Europeans and Ukrainians of Donald Trump, and then I will also try to summarize what Putin really wants. We know what Donald Trump wants. He wants a ceasefire. He wants to get out of this war. He has no other interest beyond that. He's not really interested in the expansion of NATO as Joe Biden was, nor is he really interested in the long-term civilizational agenda of Europe and Europeans, etc. So he's not really worried about those things. He wants to get out of this war. He wants to spend as little as possible of American resources in this war. He actually wants to be in a good relationship with Russia, and perhaps even wants to restore trade with Russia. Let us see what comes out of this meeting as we go forward. So first of all, let me summarize to you what came out of that meeting. So these are the 5 demands that Merz and Zelensky made. First, they said, well, that Ukraine must be an equal party at the negotiating table. I don't know what's the point of this. Ukraine cannot be an equal party. Ukraine depends on its security through external sources like Europe and the US, unlike Russia. So I don't know how they can argue that Ukraine should be an equal party, because already the fact that Donald Trump is meeting with Putin without meeting with Zelensky says that this ship has sailed. But anyway, they want to keep asserting this, I guess, because they want to, in a way, delegitimize whatever agreement Donald Trump and Putin reach by saying that Ukraine was not there, Europe was not there. So their first demand is Ukraine must be an equal party at the negotiating table. The White House has said that in the first meeting, which is kind of a hearing meeting, they're going to meet with Putin. Even they have low expectations. And then after that, they will bring in Zelensky. And so there will be a 3-part way discussion, Trump, Putin, and Zelensky. But the White House had shown absolutely no interest in including Europe. They feel that Europe is unnecessary. And I find that quite interesting and amusing even. The second point that they wanted to make was that a ceasefire must be the first step in a peace effort. Now, right now, this week, Russia has made some significant inroads in the territories that it wishes to capture in the Donetsk region. and so Russia is moving a bit forward. It has made a breakthrough. So basically, having a ceasefire right now, whether the negotiations go forward or not, is something that Ukraine is desperately looking for. And so they said, we want a ceasefire. Donald Trump also agrees that he wants a ceasefire so he can tell the MAGA crowd, look, I told you I would do this in 24 hours, but at least I did it in 6 months. So yes, but I think Putin is the last person who wants a ceasefire right now, primarily because he's in a military advantage, and every inch that he gains on the ground is an inch he gets to keep during the negotiations and after that. But the second demand that Ukraine and Europe was making, that there must be a ceasefire before any other peace efforts. I don't know what that means, because what leverage do they have over Russia? So if Russia walks away from this discussion without a ceasefire, how does Ukraine gain anything at all? I don't understand. The third point they want to make is territorial discussions can only occur based on the current front line, not Russian demands. So this particular point and the way it is framed is interesting. It sort of signals that at least the Europeans, to some extent, are now ready to concede territory to Russia. So what they mean is, if you look at the line of action, the front line right now, in his demands, Putin wants basically 4 or 5 territories. So he wants the Donetsk region, the Luhansk region, the Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and he wants to keep Crimea. But he does not have 100% of Donetsk and Luhansk. So there's at least about 30% of it still is Ukraine. He's hoping to gain that. But his demand is that all of that territory be conceded to Russia. And so negotiating any territorial exchange or swap, whatever it is, by freezing it at the front line, the Russians, the Ukrainians and the Europeans are hoping that all of Donetsk region need not be sent or handed over to Russia, but it's also quite possible that they may use that as negotiations. And what Trump was saying about swapping would be, okay, we will give you all of Donetsk and we'll give you all of Luhansk, get out of Kherson. I don't know what the Ukrainians want, but this is the one they want. The discussions will be only on where the current front line is, and there will be no discussions about territories which are part of Ukraine. This is quite understandable. I mean, Ukrainians are saying that what you could not win on the battlefield for 3.5 years, you want to win this in negotiations in Alaska. It's quite understandable at this point. The number 4 issue that they want to raise is no legal recognition of occupied territories as Russian. That would be stupid. That would be the end of negotiations. If I was Putin, I would simply say, oh, all right, I'm walking away. That's the whole point of this ceasefire. You're stopping the fire because you're conceding territory. This is land for peace. And so how will I get this land? You recognize that it's my sovereignty and my territory, etc. So this, I think, is a no-brainer. This is a non-starter. And the 5th one is the security guarantees and a robust European role, which is essential. I find it quite interesting that the Europeans want to put soldiers in Ukraine on the border with Russia. This is obviously a red line for Putin. This is why he went to war, because the expansion of NATO all the way to the Ukrainian border via Poland. Now, accepting to this condition would be that NATO will be on the border of the Donbas region. So they are way, way into Ukraine. I don't think Putin is going to agree to this. It would be interesting if it is a non-NATO guarantee. So Trump says, okay, Europeans, you want to do this, fine, put European troops, but this is not a NATO issue. And if it is not a NATO troops, I can guarantee you the Russian proxies are going to start killing all these European soldiers who are there on the border. And then they will run within a week or 2. I don't think the European countries have the stomach to take even 50 casualties on the border if some groups, Ukrainian, Russian militias start attacking them on the border. But it would be interesting, the security guarantees that they are asking. They're not going to get it. But anyway, these are the 5 guarantees that they want Donald Trump to raise. I'm not very sure that Donald Trump is going to raise all of these issues. His whole goal will be, I want ceasefire. What do you want? Do you want Paris? Do you want the Eiffel Tower? Do you want London? I'll give you the London Tower. I'll give you the Eiffel Tower. And now I'm very angry with India. I will give you the Qutub Minar also, so you can have all those three towers. Can I get a ceasefire, please? I think that's where Donald Trump is right now. But anyway, let me tell you what the Russians really are asking, and then we'll see what happens. Russians have a huge, long list of demands. Number one, they want international recognition of all the territories that they control: Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and also Crimea, that they captured in 2014. They want prevention of Ukrainian membership in NATO indefinitely. Ukraine should always remain neutral, can never join NATO. Their imposition of strict limits on the size and capabilities of Ukraine armed forces. That is amazing. They want to determine how big an army and with what capacity. It's like they're going to say, well, you can have an air force, but no fighter jets. You can only have helicopters, and that too old ones. You cannot have more than 50 helicopters. You cannot have more than 50,000 soldiers. And they can't have machine guns. They can only have pistols, maybe not even pistols, maybe knives. That's what Putin wants. He wants to determine the capacity and the size of Ukrainian defense forces. Basically, he wants a defenseless Ukraine, and so later in the future, he can take more. He also wants official recognition of Crimea as a legitimate Russian territory. He wants lifting of all Western sanctions imposed on Russia. I think this is where Donald Trump has some leverage. Lifting all Western sanctions imposed on Russia due to his actions. And then he wants the unfreezing of the $300 billion of Russian assets, which are frozen, and Europeans are using the interest from those assets to buy arms and give them to Ukraine. They talk about demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine forces. They also want guaranteed access to Crimea through Ukrainian territory via Kherson, which is kind of, wow, how can they do that? And they also want to exclude Ukraine from negotiations, and they will not meet with Zelensky until there's a new election in Ukraine. So Putin is demanding an election. I guess he wants a fair and free election in Ukraine so that he can deal with a legitimate rule. I find some of his demands quite funny and amusing. For someone who doesn't respect those principles, for him to demand that those principles be adhered by Ukraine is pretty rich. So basically, he wants an arrangement where he wants to be rewarded for the war that he fought. And he wants to make sure that the future Russia remains dominant and powerful, and Ukraine helpless, and Europeans out. Now the question is, how badly does Donald Trump want this ceasefire? It is quite possible that Donald Trump might say, okay, I'll give some of these concessions and agree. I don't know when that agreement will come. I don't think there will be a major outcome after the first meeting in Alaska, but it is quite possible that subsequently, after a meeting in which both Putin and Zelensky are there, I think Donald Trump might just propose a solution and then hope. And he has a very short temper, as the Iranians discovered that he's not going to enjoy long, protracted. Two countries which try to drag negotiations with the US have been surprised the heck out of them. India, which came first to the negotiating table for the tariffs and continued dragging the negotiations, and then they got hit with 50% tariffs, 25 plus 25 as penalty, and then the Iranians who kept dragging, and then they got bombed. So if the Ukrainians think that they can drag these negotiations, they're going to be surprised, and Trump is going to simply walk away. And perhaps maybe Russia wants that Trump walk away angry with Europe and Ukraine. That's the best case scenario for Putin. Nothing comes out, pisses off Donald Trump. He gets so ticked off that he decides that he's not even going to sell weapons to Europe, and he's not going to impose sanctions on Russia, because Europeans and Ukrainians are being stubborn, and they want to use America and America's weapons and America's money to fight their own agendas, to fight for their agenda. And I think that is what Russia really wants. They want Trump to get really ticked off with Europe and Ukraine, walk away from the process. And then if America unilaterally removes the sanctions, then that's it. It's over. The game is over for Europeans. They don't have the clout or the capacity to achieve anything. They won't be able to impose the sanctions on anybody. India and China will just have a party with Russia, and Macron can say whatever he likes, and that's it. That will be game over. So I think that's what Russia is trying to do. What the Europeans are trying to do is just be relevant. Oh, please, 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 can I sit in the audience? No? Okay, can you zoom me in? No? Can I get a copy? Can you at least, send me a summary of what you guys discussed? And that's how pathetic Europe is. Ukraine is obviously worried because this is their existence as Ukraine as it is at a stake. And it's not just that their existence as Ukraine today is at stake, but their future is also at stake, because if Putin gets everything that he demands, then they're going to be helpless, just waiting for the next invasion that Putin might unleash, or even a successor of Putin might unleash maybe 10 years down the line. So this is where we are at the moment. I understand why Europe is totally anxious, panicky, and worried. The sales of Xanax must have gone up in every capital in Europe, and we will see. It's also quite possible that absolutely nothing will come out of the meeting in Alaska, and Trump could get ticked off. The hope for Europe and Ukraine is this, that Putin somehow misplaces his hand and pisses Donald Trump off, and Donald Trump gets upset and comes out and says, you know what, I'm going to go after Russia, and I'm going to just forget about selling weapons. I'm just going to give truckload of weapons and offensive weapons to Ukraine. Go kick Russian ass. And that is what I guess Ukrainians and Europeans are hoping, praying for, that Putin really turns Donald Trump off. Let me tell you, that scenario is the least likely scenario. Donald Trump can come back frustrated. That is going to happen, but not frustrated enough to jump into the war with the guts so that Biden had shown. Plus, he has his own problems at home. He's having, there is an emerging civil war in the MAGA crowd over the war in Gaza. And there are Republicans from MAGA who are now using the G word, that Israel is committing genocide and the US is sponsoring, supporting, funding, and defending that genocide. And so he has a whole issue that he has to deal with, besides the fact that it's quite possible that tariffs may not provide the domestic economic benefits that he was anticipating. So he has a lot of domestic issues to worry about. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, on the European front, things are beginning to move faster. Until the last couple of months, it was all Middle East. Now we are back to Europe. And of course, the winner in all of this is someone who is absolutely not participating in it at all, which is China. They must be watching all this in amusement. Every inch of difference between Washington and Europe is an inch that China is gaining. Anyway, thank you for watching Khanversation. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, please subscribe to the channel. Even if you didn't find it thought-provoking, do subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care.